Hey everyone, welcome to Mighty Forces. I'm your host, Amanda Hirsch. If you're someone who gives a damn about other people, about the state of the world, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Take a load off, let your hair down, and get ready to go deep. And to get stupid. Because in my experience, the best conversations with the best people share both of these characteristics. Let's start the show. Hey everyone, and welcome to what is either the Generation X episode of Mighty Forces or maybe the Hudson Valley episode of Mighty Forces. Today, we are talking to I'm trying to think of one word that describes them both. Two forces of nature, I guess, I would say, here in the Hudson Valley of New York, where I live and have lived for the last few years after a long time in New York City. So I'm part of the trend you've read about of people who, in the pandemic and after, fled city life to become country mice. And as part of landing here and trying to build community, I found my way to Vanessa and Jean-Michel, and doing so enriched my life and my family's life in big ways. So Vanessa is the co-founder of Zena Democratic School in Kingston, New York, where my daughter is enrolled. And Jean Michel is the proprietor of Megabrain Comics, which is a beloved comic book store here in the Hudson Valley that sadly is closing at the end of the month. Like so many businesses this year, they just hit a wall that they couldn't come back from. He's got some other things cooking, a book in the works. I wanted to talk to them together. They didn't know each other before this episode, and I only know each of them a little bit, unlike some of my guests who, I've known forever and ever. I wanted to invite them on. I just had an impulse that there was some connective tissue there. I think in terms of how I perceive them, each of them has provided a space in which my daughter has been able to feel free and to feel a sense of belonging and comfort. And of course, I treasure that. And I also know that that doesn't just happen. That happens with intentionality. That happens from people who know how to design spaces and experiences that make kids feel that way. And beyond that, I see them both as people who are creating spaces that maybe help to change the story of a community and of our society. And what I mean by that is the things they've created, the school Vanessa has helped to create, the comic book shop and community that Jean Michel has created, they kind of go against the grain, against the status quo. This is how I see it. I feel like they create spaces where we can create community and connect with parts of ourselves that just mainstream, follow the script and the formula American life maybe don't provide. So I'm grateful for them. And I think that what follows is a really interesting conversation. We hear from them both as the people behind the ideas they've executed and brought into the world or been part of bringing into the world. Vanessa's quick to correct me. She's not the sole founder of the school, nor does she, quote, run it, as I mistakenly say at one point. The whole point is that it's a democratic school, so the whole community runs it. But we get into some heady ideas, I think, about what's the real point of education and how do we serve our kids best? What is it that we need to do for them to help them live their best possible lives, and what are the links between how we school our kids and what happens in our democracy? And then just the magic of comic books and the stories they tell, the way they tell them, and how the comic books themselves become a space for people who maybe don't feel like they belong elsewhere. And then the shops as hubs of community. Without giving it all away, I'll wrap up here and just say I really appreciated this conversation, a chance to get to know the two of them better and to talk about things that are super important to me and I hope resonate for you as well. So thanks so much for listening. Let's get on to the show. Hello and welcome, Vanessa and Jean-Michel, to episode X. I'm actually forgetting what number this is, but to episode X of Mighty Forces. I'm so glad to have you both here today.
I feel like we're all part of Generation X, right? So maybe that's appropriate.
There you go. Episode X, because we're all Gen X. I just intuitively sense there's some shared DNA there in terms of what motivates each of you to do what you do and to live your lives the way you do. So we'll see. Perhaps at the end of the hour, we'll be like, no, there was no shared DNA. A swing and a miss.
I wonder why she put us together.
Here's hoping. We'll remain optimistic for now. So, Vanessa, I'll start with you. You founded and run Zena Democratic School, which is the school that, spoiler alert, my daughter goes to. It's a democratic school. You had the vision for this such a long time ago, and I only know the story a little bit. So I would just love to hear what inspired you to start this school and put you on this path.
Sure. Well, I'll say I was one of the founders, and I'm one of...
fact check.
Okay. Yeah, just have to, put it out there. I was one of several, and am one of 80-ish people who are running the school right now. I'm certainly not in any sort of hierarchical role other than having, 22 years of institutional knowledge. But I was studying studying education at NYU. I knew I wanted to start a school, knew it had to look differently than anything I'd seen before. And I just happened to stumble upon a Sudbury School website and kind of was like, well, that can't be legal. Really? I don't know. But the more I read it, looked into it, the more I was like, that's it. That's what I want. Somewhere where I can have a true relationship with kids without a hierarchy, which is what I was finding in teaching, was that it was not a natural dynamic between people based on it and just solely based on age that was created. And then many of the aspects of traditional schooling was bizarre to me and didn't jive. So that's when I was in college, I found the philosophy. And then I only happened to be lucky enough to find out that there's a startup group in Woodstock when I was a senior in college. And so I called Jeff Collins, who was one of the other founders, and I told him, you stole my idea and you stole my place.
How dare you?
Yeah, but I want to be involved. And so I took the 6 a.m. bus up on Friday mornings my senior year of college to be part of the founders group. And then I graduated and we opened our first iteration this September after I graduated from college.
Okay. Let me back you up for people who are like, Sudbury, what? Can you just illuminate, at a high level, what was it about that model that made you think it must be illegal? And what is it that model is known for?
Yeah, so Sudbury, we are no longer solely a Sudbury school. We don't consider ourselves solely a Sudbury school. 3 years ago, we switched our name from Hudson Valley Sudbury School to Zena Democratic School. So some of these aspects my perspective has changed a little bit, but the core of Sudbury schools or self-directed education is that students are fully responsible for their education and their experience at school. And the school and the staff are there to support them pursuing passions, but mainly figuring out who they are, what they want, and how to get it, and all of the vast numbers of mistakes that come along our journeys, and how to cope with that and grow and change, and how to work within a community of people. And that core is really true. There Sudbury schools, there are not classes unless students ask. There are not requirements of their academic education. And then it's balanced by the school operating as a democracy. So all of the students and staff have an equal vote in everything that goes on within the school.
I mean, just to restate what I heard you say, it was really something didn't sit right with you about the forced hierarchy between the adult teacher and the students. That was the seed getting planted for you of I'm drawn to education, but there's something in this dynamic that feels problematic, inauthentic.
Yeah, for sure. And, the idea that kids respect adults because, by methods of calling them by their last name, for example, is I just don't get it. And they're like, well, they have to respect you. I'm like, that is not how I want to be respected, or not how I want someone to show me respect. But I get that line often, still to this day. And I had really positive relationships as a child with other adults in a very like caring way that I grew up. And then as I became an older teen, I had that with younger kids and really thought of them as like a part of my world and family. And it wasn't because I was their babysitter or had some formality to it. It was like I just saw them as an equal, awesome person. And that does not exist in traditional education.
Yeah,
And like
no.
the experiences I had with my high school teachers, the best ones were like the intramural, like when the math teacher started an ultimate frisbee club with us. Like what happened there, those dynamics is where the real feeling of like camaraderie and
I went to an alternative high school program, which leaned into all of that, which I don't think I would have graduated high school if I didn't go to that program. And it was like after like we would go to the regular high school, and then after third period, we would all hop into our cars or, hop on a bus, and we would go to a different building where there were 6 staff members that taught everything. We called them all by their first names, and it was awesome. Like I'm like forever grateful for them. And yeah, I think what you're doing is just hella awesome.
Nice.
That was it. You anticipated. I was going to say, I'm wondering how all this is landing with you, Jean Michel. So you've now told us. Yeah. Well, and I'm curious, and if you don't want to go here, just tell me, but I happen to know you're a dad. So I'm just curious, like, obviously so much of the parenting journey is like revisiting things from our own childhoods, as our kids experience them. So I'm just curious, like, are your kids in traditional public school? And again, if you don't want to talk about this, we don't have to talk about this, but I'm just curious, are they, and like, how's that going? And has that brought anything up for you or?
So my oldest son, he's 18. He just graduated from high school last year, and he went, we live here in Rhinebeck, and he graduated through the Rhinebeck Central School District, which is a really decent public school district. And we have 2 twins that are now like kind of just starting in first grade. And I have never really been, like I said, the school district is great. Like all the teachers are great. The schools are fantastic, but I still don't really like any of it. I am not a fan of the way that school is structured here, like the public school system is structured here. Like one thing that I feel like I'm just constantly going on a diatribe about is homework. I do not think children should have any homework at all. Like why is it that I'm sending my kids to school for X amount of hours every day, and then they get home and it's like, oh wait, so school's still going on? And then they have to just get to bed and then start it all over again. So when do we get to actually be with our kids? Recently, I started helping at the elementary school that our twins are in. And I had not realized that they have lunch and recess for, I think it's like 30 minutes or something like that, maybe 40 minutes. And it's all one thing. So all the kids have to either really hurry up and eat their food so that they can get outside and have like a decent amount of playtime, or they have to just like eat their lunch, miss out on going outside to play, and then that's it. Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing, Vanessa, how the school is structured with you.
Yeah. Tell us more about Zena and like maybe pick up with this idea of 30 minutes for, recess.
It's the complete opposite, really. Like the school is open from 8:30 to 4. Kids can come whenever they choose. They have to be here 5 hours or more a day, and they have free access to what they do. So, little people are pretty much have recess and hopefully some lunch is thrown in there all day. And so, there's always constantly sports games happening, basketball, soccer. We have a lot of soccer. It's great. and banana slug tag and capture the flag and, whatever it might be. And then just little kids running through the campus, playing whatever imaginary adventure game they have going. Eating lunch is a different story because people can eat whenever they want to. And so the battle more is with the little people remembering to eat. We just instituted a lunch club, which I'm just realizing, like, oh, I wonder if someone else did lunch club today since I'm doing this. Where we'd like, all right, you guys, it's lunch club. Who wants to join? Just as a reminder at noon to maybe we want to eat something. And a little tiny people, they come flocking and they kind of love that environment they've created for lunch club. But it's really open-ended.
I will say that, the times that we're living in just make me become ever more ardent of a supporter of what Zena is doing, because, we have a democracy in crisis, and this is a school that imprints on them every day, day in and day out, what it actually means to be a member of a democracy, to do the actions and the behaviors and the processes that are part of being in a democracy. And there's a lot of learning how to self-advocate, but how to self-advocate in community, not just, I want this and I want that.
Right.
Gimme. But I want this. Oh, no one else wants that? Well, shoot, what am I going to do about that? Am I going to yell at them? Am I going to come up with a compromise? Am I going to choose a different battle? Am I going to be persuasive? And just look at the world. Imagine if more of us had those skills instead of, the baggage I carry is I was such, the perfect student. I got the gold stars, straight A's, And then when I got into the quote real world, I had a crisis because I felt like a hamster and you had just pulled me off the hamster wheel. I knew how to keep getting gold stars on that wheel, but then it was well, what do you want to do, Amanda? What? Excuse me? Since when has what I want to do been relevant?
It's bizarre that if you look back to why traditional schooling was created, it was in the Industrial Revolution in our country, right? To create factory workers. It was not hidden. It was a blatant need that we had. And that hasn't changed, right? The format of most traditional schooling hasn't changed. Even really nice private schools that do it in a kinder way, still the underlying lessons are still there. It's that you need us to tell you what to do and how to do it. And if you follow this formula, it will garner success.
And keep looking at the clock. Make sure you do it in this amount of time.
And then also separate your work and your play. Because you have to do these things, and I know it's hard, but you have to buckle down and do it. And then you'll have this little time that's fun. But then you have to go back to this thing that's we're going to force you to do. And that is not.
Yes, when you get home, you still have to keep working.
Yeah, to your point earlier, right? So then you're teaching people to become workaholics, essentially, in a sense, right? You're not modeling any kind of it's important to move around outside just as it's important to, learn about history.
And you're eliminating the capacity for people to learn how to think abstractly. You know what I mean? I feel like when I was younger, school wasn't as structured as it still was. It was public school, but I feel like there was still a little bit of elbow room for me to still figure out the world and figure out ways to be resourceful and subvert, the stuff that they were trying to hammer into my head. And now it's they don't give you any breathing room at all. It's just just make sure that you can figure out, everything that's going to happen on this test. It's not really necessary for you to actually learn the stuff. Just make sure you know it enough to pass this thing, and then we'll move you on to the next one. And it's this blueprint for getting into an office and George Jetson, just make sure you know how to hit this button.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And then we have
Yeah.
Severance, the show Severance. But
Oh God. Oh my God.
It's also, I think that a lot of it too, if we look now at our world and specifically our country, it's like it goes further than just knowing how to work within a democracy. It's really how do you work within a community, and it's
Yeah.
like it and people who are different than you are, and it's we don't know as a people how to work together. We just don't, and so I think that is like the single most important thing that we could be helping our young people get is like, how do you live in a community and work together to solve
Well,
problems? Because we have a lot of them.
we're just doing it all wrong.
well, except some of us aren't, right? There are
Well, yeah,
pockets, right? And we can
yeah.
celebrate. And, I hope to amplify with this podcast, like awareness of what's happening with Zena and inspire people to think about models like this.
Yeah.
And, I think so much of it is about being willing to really be honest and strip away thinking about your real intentions with your kids and like what you want for them in life, because I experienced so much symbolism along the path, right? I mean, it's like when I was in college, the myth that surrounded me was that it was about education for the sake of education. But it very much looked and felt like a degree factory where it was about getting the credential that qualified you, not just to get a job, but to get a job that paid a certain amount. I happened to go to the University of Pennsylvania, where a lot of the graduates were undergrad from Wharton to jobs like making $100,000 a year at age 21, So to be an English student, it's like, I'm just here to learn. Like, it didn't compute. And then, you start to ask the question of, well, if I'm really here to learn, it gets to so much of Zena's model of like, well, what does that actually mean? I could be reading a bunch of books and my parents wouldn't have to pay tuition and I would still be learning.
It's interesting because especially for teenagers, especially for kids who've been here for a long time, I think it's so much just in them. Right there, we don't separate. There's no class on democracy. There's no class on internal motivation. Right? So they are very much just living their life, and the beauty is built into the day-to-day workings of the school. And then as you get older, you start to kind of look and compare yourself more, and it can feel scary. Right. And especially also for parents, like, well, my kid doesn't know how to do algebra or this or that. And so we're really looking at how to articulate the school differently now so that the kids have more of an understanding as they grow up what it is exactly that they're doing and like the brilliance of the stuff that is not within a classroom or an offering, as we call them.
I feel like that's the key, or not the key, but I feel like that's what I'm hoping to eventually see in my kids. Like I'll feel a little bit less nervous and anxious if I know my kids are growing up and learning how to learn about something. All the kids are going to like the school factory and learning the stuff that they're saying they need to learn. But like, what about when you get out in the world and it's like, oh, you're presented with stuff that's like, oh, this wasn't in school. And then,
right.
I mean, the way it usually goes is like, well, I guess I'm just not going to learn that, or I'm going to go do something else instead of, oh, I'll figure that out, or I know how to approach this thing and figure it out. And like teaching people to actually be resourceful instead of teaching people how to, know what they need to be, productive.
Right. I would dare say that aspect and that quality is far more important than any knowledge that they would get in 12 years of education.
Yeah. Well, and encountering the democratic school model, or specifically the Zena model too, something that I'm often saying to, grandparents and others is that also we carry around this story as if we think you're going to fall off a cliff when you're 18. Like if we crammed it all in there. I mean, we live in the age of the internet. Like acquiring knowledge is easier than it's ever been in all of human history. So if my daughter decides she's really curious about art history at age 19 or age
Right.
29. Like, the world's her oyster. Like, keep learning. You know, it's not like, well, if you didn't, take it in school.
Yeah, but my daughter is applying to college. She had the first essay she ever wrote in her whole life was the Common App essay. And
Oh,
I
wow.
will not say it was easy. It's been a hard experience for her. Her essay is amazing. I don't know that she believes it, but it is. And she's saying, like, I don't know how to do this because of the school. For sure, you're not going to get everything in whatever program you're in. But it took like 2 weeks of learning how to write essays as opposed to 12 years.
A lot of people go through all the motions of learning to write essays and still write.
And they still don't. They still don't know how to do it.
They know the introduction, paragraph 1, paragraph 2, conclusion, right? But they don't they don't know what they're thinking. They don't know what they want to say.
Yeah.
And she knows what she wants to say. She has a voice. That kid has a voice in every way possible, but she, doesn't know didn't know like how to format the essay. Like, that's easy.
I want to make sure we move over into the world of comic books and Megabrain Comics and all of that. I want to build a bridge to that from where we are now. But I want to say first that what you just shared reminds me of a story. There's someone who works at the school whose kids were in a democratic school environment when they were younger. And then I think one or more of them have decided to stay with that. But one, as high school approached, decided he wanted to go to public school for whatever reason. I don't know what the reasons were, but he decided.
He saw it in a movie.
Yeah, he saw it in a movie.
They had lockers.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And apparently when, they met with the school to assess his readiness to like hit the ground running in grade 9, there was like literally the only gap was one math unit. And I don't remember if it was algebra or trigonometry. I don't know what you learn at what age, but let's call it algebra. He was so motivated to learn it so that he could achieve his goal of going to public school that over the course of, he got a workbook essentially. And over the course of like a couple of months.
I've got a segue for you.
Okay.
I have a kid who is 20, almost 23. They spent most of their time at school reading, mostly comic books. Comic books are huge in our house. Graphic novels, huge.
Nice.
Comics, draws comics. You want a kid to draw a comic? I got you a kid. Comic art. And then at age 15, was like, I'm so bored. I probably should do some math just because people think it's important. Let me just check it out. And at 15, in 6 months, taught himself everything from 3rd grade math through college level calculus.
Wow.
And he graduated with a master's from Stevens Institute of Technology and Pure Mathematics. Now interested in atmospheric engineering, like climate change engineering. How do you study a wave? It's beyond me.
That
right?
is
But
awesome.
That was a kid whose education was all reading comic books and drawing comic book art.
Amazing. Okay, so now, Jean-Michel, this is your time to shine. Tell us, how did you become someone who, am I right that Megabrain is the only Black-owned comic book shop in New York?
It is until the end of this month when it closes, which is a bummer. Yeah, we are the only Black-owned comic book store in New York State.
That's unbelievable.
And one of the very few in the world. And it's been great. It's been almost 8 years at this point. And if we had gotten to December of 2025, it would be 8 years. And it's the coolest place that I've ever been able to be a part of. So as a kid, I loved comic books from the first moment that my sisters gave me one. And I was an artist, always drawing and painting and creating my own characters and stuff like that. And so I just never stopped. I was always reading them. And I enjoyed reading as a kid, but just like your kid, Vanessa, at one point, it's like they were the only thing I wanted to read. And I would have teachers assigning me to read stuff, and I just wouldn't read it. And instead I'm reading like the latest X-Men comic or Spider-Man or something. But at some point I, expanded out into reading literally just everything. 9 years ago, I was working in Woodstock. I had a very fantastic, well-paying job, and I hated everything. It was a job that had I didn't have like any real connection to. I mean, I had connection to it, but it wasn't mine. Like, it was something that I was doing for somebody else. And so I left that gig, and my wife and I, like, we had just gotten married, and we kept talking about things like, oh, well, we live in Rhinebeck. She grew up here, and she always wanted to like have her own business in the town where she grew up and stuff. And we were trying to like think of something that we could do. It's like, do we buy a house? Do we open a business? And one night we were a friend of ours was over, and we were having cocktails, and he and I were just geeking out about all of our favorite comic shops that we hung out at as kids. And as she's listening to this, she was like, you should open like a comic book store in Rhinebeck. And it was like an explosion in my head. And I literally went out the next day, and I just started walking around the village looking for available commercial space. And then I think it was 4 months later, we opened the doors, and it's been a blast ever since. And I've seen, I mean, much like teachers, that are teaching like a new class of kid every year. Like, I've seen so many kids come into the shop, and then, a few years later, some, man walks in with a beard and is like, hey, John. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, it's me. And it's like the little kid that came in a few years ago and like bought their first comic book. And it's mind blowing, but also like really rewarding to like see these kids like grow up and like see what they've taken from all the kooky stories that they grew up reading and things like that. The comic shop that I had, I had two in the town where I grew up. And if they didn't exist, I'm not really sure what would have happened to me. Like, they were the place that I would go to hang out. It was like my own little personal community center. And when you were there, it's like you would interact and have these like really engaging conversations, not just with like other kids my age, but there were also like, adults in there like buying their comics, and like we're discussing the same story that we both read, and like I'm learning what they got from it and like understanding how they see things. And it was an experience that I feel like most kids wouldn't get until like they get to college almost. You know what I mean? Like those types of social interactions. And so I wanted to like make sure that the kids in this area, like in this town and the surrounding towns, were able to like get that experience, and be a place where like families like you, Amanda, can go to and connect and engage with your kids on that level also.
Yes.
Which doesn't always happen.
In leaning into what lit you up, you created something that lit community up. And I think that's also often the recipe, right? If you're just going through, and it comes back to, why do we want kids to know what they want and how to make it happen? Because when you know what you want, I want to open a comic book store, and you make it happen, when you're in that kind of alignment with like the truth of who you are, sorry to get cheesy, but like
not at all.
It ripples, right?
Yeah.
Like if you were just going through the motions and you were like, well, we did some market research and we saw there was an opportunity to open a cider shop in town, right? Like the weekenders are going to buy all the cider and it's a great business model, whatever.
Well, so.
Oh, do you also have a cider shop?
No. So when it came time to open the shop up, and I was opening it in like this little village of Rhinebeck, which is like a big tourist community for the most part during certain seasons. And everybody kept giving me advice on like, well, you should make sure that you have this and that you can do this because when the tourists come during the summer or during the fall, they're going to like eat that up. And every time I'm like, that's not really why I'm doing this. Like my first mission was to create a business that everybody that like lives here would enjoy and want to engage with. And if the byproduct of that is like, oh, and when tourists come in here, like they can possibly find some stuff that they're interested in too, great. But I wanted to make sure that the local community had something that they could call like their own and that they can find value in.
Yeah. Well, and for our family, we moved up from the city a few years ago. We're part of that story. And we used to visit the area frequently before we lived here. And we fucking loved coming to Megabrain. And we ended up buying a house in Hyde Park, which doesn't have much going on, which we sort of love about it. But part of our calculus was we're only 15 minutes from Rhinebeck. And in our mind, one of the things that made Rhinebeck special was Megabrain. So,
Thanks.
It changed our experience of the community. Now, everyone who wishes city people would stop moving up here are probably like, damn you, Megabrain. Now, like you entice this city people up here. But
a lot of people were saying, damn you, Megabrain, for many reasons. I can tell you that.
Well, but the other thing I want to bring up is, and you mentioned this in terms of creating a space like my daughter enjoys, and we, the three of us, my husband and daughter and I enjoy together, is I feel like something that I see you guys having in common, which may or may not have ever been an explicit purpose, is that you create spaces that are welcoming for neurodivergent kids and queer kids. So just to name, the reason we had been hanging out quite so much at Megabrain in the last 6 months or so is that you had been hosting a queer game night for the local queer community. And we started coming and just clicked immediately with all the people. My husband and I aren't queer, but our daughter is. And we just felt like it was just so lovely, like just a space in the community to drop in and play games and connect with other nerds, right? Like I think that's what it was symbolically. Like, if there's a comic book store that there are nerds nearby. And if you're a nerd, then you're like, oh, good. It's like it's like if you're moving to a community and you're Jewish, you see a synagogue, you're like, my people are here. You see a comic book store and you're like, oh, good, the nerds are here.
So yes, but there's lots of different flavors of nerd, and there are a lot of different flavors of comic book store. And I've always subscribed to the philosophy that every town, no matter how big or small, needs a comic book store, whether it's like a comic shop that's the size of a closet or one that is the size of like Walmart. I think they're a valuable part of the community. And if every town can have like 6 different gas stations and like 3 different antique stores and like, the olive oil stores, like why can't every town have
Never
like at least
the
one
olive oil store.
comic book store? So,
and why a comic book store specifically? I can intuit, but why that? Why not a bookstore? Why specifically a comic book store?
So I think, for me personally, I think comic books are one of the most exciting, versatile, and expressive mediums that we have, like in the world. Like when you have a comic book, it can be like traditionally growing up for me. A comic book was always a collaborative effort, really. Like you have an issue of the X-Men and you open it up and there's like a penciler who's like the artist. And then you have the inker who also, takes up the art, the colorist, the writer, the editor, the assistant editor, and the letterer. And it's an effort to like take this story, and every time it's like put in another person's hand, that story becomes a little bit different, and it becomes a little bit more a part of that person and a part of their story, and they add their own little spice to it, which is amazing. And I always love that aspect of it. I love movies and I love TV. But like one of the fun things about comics that I've always adored is like the page turn and the punctuation of that page turn. Like you're in the story and something is happening, but you get to this last panel and then you turn that page and something happened that you did not expect and you didn't see coming. That in itself is beautiful. The other thing about comics is that there are so many different like you have your superhero comics, you have your manga, which are, I mean, manga just means comic book essentially, in which are traditionally Japanese comic books. And you have like European style comics, which are like their own tone and spirit to it. And that's also what I love is like regionally, like no matter where you are in the world, everybody has comics, but everybody does it a little bit differently, but it's still the same language almost.
Yeah. No, look, I have a question for you, but I'm also cognizant of the time. We've gone over.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So no, but I want to be respectful of your guys' time. So I hate to ask, could I be so bold as to ask you to stay on 10 more minutes?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I can do 10 more.
10 more?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to prioritize asking you guys each a question that I definitely want to ask. And then if there's magically time, I have more things. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. That's the issue. So a question I like to ask of all my guests is, this is Mighty Forces is the podcast for people who give a damn, right? Like I want to talk to people, whether they're artists, entrepreneurs, educators, all of the above, some of the above, things without clear titles, nonprofit leaders, like whatever it is you do. I want to talk to you in this show if you're someone who I think is wired to inherently just give a shit about other people. Like you are oriented, the way you are wired is you can't help but think about how are other people doing and what about the state of the world? You know, I mean, that's just, whereas there are some people who just think about themselves and maybe their family members and that's how they go through life. Those are not the people that this podcast is for. So, as someone, I'm naming you each as someone who gives a damn. And if you can imagine that other people listening also give a damn, I just wonder what might be in your heart in this moment to share with them.
Yeah, it's an interesting moment to ask that question in the world, isn't it? I guess I would say that we have to equally find our people and, you know, like build our bubble of safety and connection so that we have the power to change the small, which I think then changes the big. I mean, it's such a impossibly hard moment in the world to like feel any sort of empowerment. So I think that people feel disempowered. So whatever we can do to give power and ownership to each other, I guess is what I'm feeling is the most important way to get through the reality of our current society. And that's like a really maybe jaded view on the world at the moment. It would have been a different answer like a year ago or 5 years ago. But right now it feels like somewhat desperate in that sense of like going really small so that we have a chance of making bigger change.
I think that's really beautiful, Vanessa. And I don't know, resonates for me. You know, agency is such an important theme for me. And I think when we forget that we have agency, you know, things go south. And even in this moment, people still have agency. And I mean, people are exhausted, people are depressed, overwhelmed, all of the things. And so sometimes being like, but you still have agency can be like,
Yeah.
screw you, like you have agency. But it is true. And I really think it's lovely how you expressed it in terms of starting small and trusting that ripples outward.
Yeah, because if we look at the very like core of what it feels like the main issues in our society is a lack of people feeling that they have power. And then they take their power out on people in ways that are completely damaging and wrong, like the wrong strategy to, and so if we can empower people, then I feel like it can only help, it's cheesy, but you just go back to that, like, be the change you wish to see in the world. And it doesn't mean you have to like change the world in this overarching moment, but we can change our world, like our bubble. Comic book stores were amazing because kids, and it's interesting how you said like this was the way it was before, and that was the way it was before. And it's like comic book stores to me are also like a place where people gather that did that before. Like my kids use comic book stores for Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering and like all those things where it brings different types of people together. And my son, who's 13, is now playing Magic at the comic book store with my 26-year-old who played Magic at that comic book store when he was 13. And so if that was a change, like that is someone changing the world because they have that access to that space that feels safe and they can explore and be creative.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. All right, Jean-Michel, what's in your heart to share with other people who give a damn?
I mean, there's like a million different things I could say, especially like given the current state of things. But for a long time, so my wife and I we went from being a household with no car payments to a household with 2 car payments because both of our cars died within 3 months of each other. But I had this Subaru and I had it for like, 12 years or something like that. And I had made a bumper sticker for my car that I put on the back of it around the first time that the Supreme Leader became the Supreme Leader. And it just said, "Your life matters to me," for like whoever reads it, because it's true. Whoever's listening or whoever's out there, like, I may not know you. If I met you, I might really not like you.
You might suck.
you may be a person that just sucks. But it doesn't change the fact that your life still matters to me. Because in the end, like, all of the weird, are we allowed to curse?
Yes, I have number of times.
all of the weird bullshit of like, well, I live over here and 3 miles down the road, that's a different place. And you live over there. And because of that, I have a problem with you. Or because you speak like this and I speak like this, I have a problem with you. All of it is fucking stupid because it's a crapshoot. It's a crapshoot of like, where you were born or where you were born or where I was born. Like, any of these people could have been born somewhere else. There's a great, not to diverge, but there's a great Superman graphic novel that starts by saying, well, like, Superman came to Earth from Krypton, but when he came, the planet was just slightly askew than usual. And so Superman landed in Russia and he was raised by the Russian government. And it's like this, it is one of the most amazing graphic novels that you can ever read. It's called Superman Red Sun. It's all arbitrary. It's all bullshit. And so because of that, everybody should recognize the more that we keep bickering and like I don't know, like just not recognizing that like we're not going to get anywhere if we're arguing over whether or not like somebody speaks a different language than us. Like, we're not gonna get anywhere. So your life matters to me. And then maybe I'll follow it up with a question to a bunch of people who may be hearing this and be thinking something else. Why doesn't my life matter to you? So like, I think that it's an important statement that people should all be able to say to each other. And that's also an important question. that everybody should be able to ask one another.
Mm-hmm.
There is one thing.
I'm catching on to your MO here. Yeah. One more thing, and then I have to honor my ability to let you guys.
Can I smuggle something?
Smuggle. You may smuggle one more thing in.
My wife and I have recently been watching the television show The Pit, which is like phenomenal. And there is a scene where Noah Wiley plays the main character, the resident doctor, and he is sort of helping this brother and sister say goodbye to their father, who is like on his deathbed in the hospital. And he tells them that like something that he learned like years ago from his mentor is at times like that, there is a Hawaiian saying that he learned, which helps minister you through difficult times like that. And he's like, it's just 4 things. I love you. Thank you. I forgive you. Please forgive me. And I feel like those 4 things are like a phenomenal set of phrases that everybody should keep in their minds.
I love that.
Sorry, that's my smuggle.
I love that. It was well smuggled. Oh, that was really, thank you guys so much for taking the time. I'm not being glib when I say I mean, and I don't worry, I won't, but I could keep talking to you. I mean, there's so many different tangents. So we might have to do this again sometime.
Whenever you want.
Thank you both for your time. Really, I appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks so much for listening. If you loved this episode, please consider sharing it with someone who might need it. And please take a few minutes and leave a review. That really helps the show find its people. Mighty Forces is produced by Amanda Hirsch and Haley Hatcher. The music of Mighty Forces was written and performed by Jordan Hirsch, aka my wonderful husband. Till next time, remember, you are a mighty force, and we're mightier together.